I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a tough decision that this Dolphins coaching staff and front office must make that I don't think a lot of people have been talking about on Dolphins Twitter or content creator space. What is that decision, you ask? Well, what should the Dolphins do with Jaelan Phillips? Because Phillips, former first-round pick in the 2021 draft, has had a very solid career to this point, but has also dealt with massive injuries and is entering in 2025 the final year of his contract. Like I said, it is the fifth-year option on his rookie contract. He's making $13.2 million this season. But the issue with Jaelan Phillips is that he's just played 12 games in the past 2 years. He played 8 games in 2023 and then 4 games in 2024. That's 35.2% of the games Miami's played in the last 2 seasons. That is not a lot, folks. And although when he's on the football field, he's been very, very good in both the run game and the pass rushing department, the question is, are you going to make an investment on a player that has had so many injuries in the past and could ultimately not be worth the financial investment that he is going to require? That's the question. And we're going to debate from both sides of the equation on today's show, but I want to get your thoughts on it first. Would you extend Jaelan Phillips going into the final year of his rookie contract? Let me know. Type Y if you would extend him. Type N if you would not to extend him. And I'll say this. Later on in the show, I am going to tell you what I would officially do as of right now with Jaelan Phillips in terms of extending him or not extending him. But I do want to go through him as a player and talk through some of what the Dolphins have done in the past, because I do want it to be clear, there was another player drafted in the first round in that 2021 draft class of Jaelan Phillips. It was Jalen Waddle. And the Dolphins have already decided what to do with Jalen Waddle entering last season. Before this past season in 2024, the Dolphins already extended Jalen Waddle, who was in the same draft class, on a 3-year, $84.75 million contract. Now, Waddle has had a much better start to his career. Wide receiver is a position that Miami values, and they wanted to lock in Waddle as the future wide receiver one of this organization once Tyreek Hill moves on. And I understand that, but I do find it fascinating they were swift and quick to get Waddle locked down long term when Jaelan Phillips could have had that same type of contract in that draft class. And when you look at what the Dolphins have at linebacker/edge right now, it's one of the most confusing positions on this Dolphins roster. And you might ask why. Well, it's because they drafted Chop Robinson with the 21st pick in last April's draft, and he's been a really good return on investment early on here. But outside of him, you have Phillips, who has one more year on his contract. You have Bradley Chubb, who could be a cut casualty and a cut candidate to save $19.5 million this offseason. And you have another rookie in Mo Kamara that you drafted in the middle rounds of the 2024 draft. So outside of Chop, you only have Mo Kamara on this team with a long-term contract and a future in this group. So you have a little bit of a murky area in terms of what the future of this edge group looks like on this Dolphins roster. And before I tell you what I expect or what I think the Dolphins should do, I want to tell you what I expect with Jaelan Phillips. And I do think with the murkiness of what is going to happen with Bradley Chubb, what is going to happen in the NFL draft and NFL free agency, I wouldn't expect the Dolphins to make a decision on what to do with Jaelan Phillips in terms of extending him, not extending him, until May, June, heck, maybe even July before training camp. Because they'll probably want to see how he's progressing from this torn ACL injury, and they'll probably will be telling us what they're going to do based off what they do in the draft. If they draft another edge rusher with the 13th pick, which I would not call it crazy, like if the Dolphins picked Mykel Williams from Georgia at 13, Mike Green, or any of these other edge rushers like James Pierce at 13 overall in the NFL draft, like it would not shock me. And that would basically tell you, yeah, they're probably not extending Jaelan Phillips before 2025, and they're going to move forward with Chop Robinson, Kamara, and whoever that draft pick is. Or maybe they sign a couple players in free agency at edge. So that will personally declare to me what Miami will ultimately do. Now, with that being said, though, getting back to Phillips as a player, he is very, very good when he's able to stay on the field. Like, he was excellent in 2022, in 2023, and yeah, 2023 season got cut short, but he was on a tremendous pace to have his first double-digit sack season, right? I mean, he's on pace there to get 12, 13 sacks potentially. And then he has the Achilles injury that forces him to miss the remaining 6 games. And then he returns and is somehow able to play in week 1 for the Dolphins, plays in the first 4 games of the year, and then tears his ACL on Monday Night Football against the Tennessee Titans. Like, it was just truly disheartening and heartbreaking to see Phillips return from the tough injury that was the Achilles just to suffer another catastrophic injury in a different part of his lower body, which is why there's major concern on giving him a long-term extension going into 2025. And we're going to continue this conversation, but I do got to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Factor Meals, the number one way that I stay in shape, eat healthy. It helps me out so much because Factor Meals has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes so you can feel great no matter what life throws at you. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I usually use Calorie Smart and Protein Plus the most. You can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with the Factor Keto meals, though. Based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on diet and exercise, but it is possible, folks, and they're delivered straight to your door. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Shout out to Factor. That link is in the description and comments of today's show. Now, if you're going to make the argument to pay Jaelan Phillips, this would be one of them. It's the fact that he, unlike some other edge rushers out there in the NFL, is capable of being impactful in the run game as well as rushing the passer. His grades in terms of rush defense have been good. In 22 and 23, he was rated very above average. Now, he struggled his rookie season, but listen, he's a rookie. He's adjusting to the NFL. But you see how good his grades were in the 22 and 23 seasons. You can throw away the 24 seasons basically because he only played 4 games. But in the 22 and 23 campaign, the former Hurricane was terrific for the Dolphins defense. And we talk about the run game being something he's good at. How about how good he is in terms of getting after the quarterback? Like, this statistic kind of doesn't even need to talk about how many games he plays because it's just used on when he rushes the passer. What is his win rate? Yeah, it's very, very good. He is ranked inside the top 50 and pass rush win rate every year of his career. I just want it to be known, by the way, when you talk about in the NFL, there are 32 NFL teams, which means there are 2 edge rushing starting players on each team, which means there are 64 starters. But there also is probably about 85, 90 players that could be contributed as players that contribute / are starting caliber players as well because a lot of teams have a 3-man rotation. Yet he still is in the top half of pass rush win rate every single year of his career. With in 2022, he was 6th in the NFL with a 16.9% win rate. He is consistently someone getting after the quarterback, forcing them to step up in the pocket, to get flushed out of the pocket, and Phillips is able to complement that with good run stopping ability as well. Jaelan Phillips is a very, very good edge rusher, and he's a hit prospect. Like, it is a good pick by Chris Grier when they drafted him 18th overall in 2021. The question is, though, is he going to be able to stay healthy long term? And we'll talk about his injury history, but when Jaelan Phillips news happens, whether it's them not extending him, whether it is the Dolphins giving him an extension, we will have you covered. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a piece of Miami Dolphins news when it gets announced. Join the channel today. And it's a legit cause for concern. when Jaelan Phillips is on the field, he's great. He looks like one of the best young edge rushers in the NFL, and the difference between the Dolphins defense with him on the field to when he's off the field, it's very evident. It's paramount. But the issue is he just can't stay on the field. We mentioned the number earlier on in the show. He has played in 12 of the possible 34 regular season games for the Dolphins. 35.4% of the games over the past 2 seasons. And it's not like the injuries have just been nagging, reoccurring injuries. They're major injuries. They started in September of 2023 when he had a back sprain, forced him to miss a game. Then, a couple weeks later, he had an abdomen strain. He missed a couple more games. Then he stayed healthy for all of October, most of November, before tearing his Achilles, which ended his season, missing the last 6 games of the 2023-24 season. Was able to return to the Dolphins roster and be available for Week 1 against Jacksonville Jaguars in 24. But then in that Week 4 game against the Tennessee Titans, he tore his ACL, which forced him to miss the last 13 games of the season. And the reason why it's important to talk about this is because these injuries are no joke. If they were just consistent nagging injuries in the back and abdomen, you'd be like, all right, this is what it is. But for a young player in a position like an edge rusher, a defensive lineman, that is so important to have physicality, a quick first step, burst off of the line of scrimmage. Yeah, you know what's important to have burst? A perfectly healthy knee and a good Achilles. And it's not saying that he doesn't have that anymore, but when you've already had catastrophic injuries like a torn Achilles and torn ACL, that's going to affect the ability that you have to be an athlete, to get off the ball quick, to beat these offensive tackles with speed moves, and then leverage that in with a swim move or a power move. So I'm skeptical of Jaelan Phillips being able to be good long-term for the Dolphins. And when you talk about what the Dolphins have struggled with over the past couple of seasons, it's been being able to stay healthy on the football field. The Dolphins simply cannot invest in an injury-prone player. And as much as it sucks to admit, Jaelan Phillips is an injury-prone player. If he can stay healthy in 2025 and prove that he can return to being an elite pass rusher, so if he plays 14, 15 games this season, has 8.5 to 10 sacks, and is a difference maker in the run game, well then I would love to sign Jaelan Phillips to a long-term extension after 2025. But I am not going to extend him before the season. I need to see him play a full year after back-to-back seasons in 23 and 24 of big injuries like a torn Achilles and a torn ACL. But it's not like you have just extending him or not. Like, yeah, it would be pricey, but if you do want to hold on to him after the 2025 season, you would have the franchise tag option to do that as well. You can transition tag him. You can tag him and then buy yourself time to work on an extension to where he doesn't have to play on a 1-year, $25 million type franchise tag price, which it could be next season. It just ultimately gives Miami a lot of flexibility. So to me, if you're asking me the question on if Jaelan Phillips should get extended before he enters the final year of his 5th-year team option on his rookie contract, I am saying no. I'm letting this year play out, seeing if he could stay healthy, seeing if he could be productive. And if he can do both of those things, well, then I am fine paying him $18, $20+ million going forward, because he is someone that when he's on the field is really, really good. And I'd like to keep him around, but he needs to be able to prove he can stay healthy. As always, folks, make sure you stay subscribed. I'm Nic Rohloff. We put out daily content here at Dolphins Today, including weekly live shows on Tuesdays. If any more news or rumors comes out in Miami, we'll have you covered. And like I always say, if you're still watching today's show and episode and you're not subscribed, well, you clearly like what we're doing, so join the channel right now. Don't miss a thing.